when I would finish a consult with every parent, I would always tell them, you need to follow your peace. So pray about things. If you do not feel peace in your heart about it, then God is not in that space. And don't let anxiety lead you. Don't let fear lead you, because that is the norm, that we just feel like we have to do things. And I tell my team this too. I'm like, take time, sit back, and rest in the quiet. God is in the quiet spaces, in that peaceful moment. He will lead you and guide you, but you have to be in a place where you can listen.
Welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast. This podcast is brought to you by BJU Press Homeschool. Homeschooling is an exciting adventure we take with our children. One of the most challenging parts of this journey is choosing the curriculum you want to use. BJU Press Homeschool is a curriculum you can trust. All the books, resources, and videos have been designed with you and your child in mind. Their curriculum is educationally robust and rich, taking into account that children have different learning styles, strengths, and needs. Mom, you are in charge. BJU Press Homeschool is here to come alongside and support you. Do you need help with the teaching load, or is there a subject you just don't want to teach? Their amazing video courses are available for all grades and almost every subject. BJU Press Homeschool believes that homeschooling can produce a new generation of students who know God, love their neighbors, and stand firm in their faith. For more information, go to bjupresshomeschool.com. That's bjupresshomeschool.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast, where our goal is to help you thrive in your homeschooling journey. Let me take just a minute to ask you to please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen or watch, including YouTube. And if this podcast has been encouraging to you, please leave us a good review. Each review really does help. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Thanks for joining us for the second part of this important conversation with Peggy Ployhar on understanding and homeschooling the struggling learner in your life. Peggy has years of experience in this area and will encourage you through her message of hope as you journey with your child with patience and love. Peggy is a physicist turned home educator who left a lucrative career in the medical device industry to teach the struggling learners in her own home after her oldest son's diagnosis with Asperger's syndrome. And today we'll talk a little bit more about SPED Homeschool, the organization she founded and continues to grow. So stay tuned. This episode will really encourage you. Okay, now let's get back to Texas. And you're doing... Have you started SPED at this point, or are you just doing special needs training through THSC?
Yeah, so through THSC, I worked for a couple of years, actually. I bought the URL, SPED Homeschool, really didn't know what to do with it. I kept praying. I was like, God, I know I need a release from you. He's not going to bless something unless, he's calling me to it. So I just let it sit. I really had no idea what was going to happen with that. And then all of a sudden one night I was praying and God said, let go. You are done with SPED Homeschool, or not with SPED Homes, but with THSC. And I was like, what does that mean? And so I started journaling, and I was like, okay, what have I been doing for them? And the next morning we had an all team meeting, and it was a budget meeting. They said, we need to cut our budget. Things are getting tight. And I said, let me go. And I had an assistant at that point. I'm like, she can take over everything you need to do, but I really feel called to do this. And they said, okay, take your Facebook group, take all these things that you've developed. It was like, I felt like Moses leaving Egypt. And they're like, take it all with you and start this.
Amazing.
This needs to happen.
Wow.
So
what year was that, Peggy?
Yeah, that was 2017.
Okay, 2017.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then you just started working on, did you have to set up the nonprofit status, or had you already done that?
Yes. Yep. So I called together a board of directors. We established as a 501c3, and even we had a board meeting this week, and I was reading through our purpose statement, and I said, we're still on track. God, really, when I prayed through what is this organization supposed to do, we have aligned with that the entire time, but programs we've done have changed, some things we've tried. We had a family camp that was super, super successful, and I really wished it coulda went on, but my my intentions going in was, and I told the board this, I told everybody at the camp this, I can't lead this on an ongoing basis. I can set the vision. This is not my calling. If nobody steps forward, it won't continue. And nobody stepped forward. And so we had to let it go. And so we've had things like that. And actually, this past year, we've gotten enough private donors to bring on a person full time, which I've never had. We're going to
Wow.
launch a program that's going to support all the state organizations starting in January. And my board was ecstatic
Now, when
about
you
we've
say
been doing some research.
support the state organizations, in what way?
So, we've been doing research since September about what a lot of the state organizations are seeing and what they can't, in-house really accommodate. So a lot of parents are calling and saying, "I've got children who have these certain struggles, can I what can I give them that is just an easy to understand, these are the accommodations for that, these are the teaching strategies you can use, and then where they can follow up to get more resources." And so we actually launched a whole new platform on our website, and so it has categories, and so we are able to we're creating fact sheets. So state organizations will be able to partner with us on 3 different levels, and the first level would be that they could access these fact sheets and be able to give them out to anybody that calls them. And then access the basic things on our platform as well. The next level up would be to be able to provide discounts to their members. We are going to provide one-on-one consulting services starting in January as well. And so if state orgs either have a question come in from a member that they can't answer, or if they don't have anybody on staff that can't fill that need, then we will have somebody that could do that for them. And so we have another package deal where they could get a certain number of consults included with that too. So we have 3 different levels because we've heard from a lot of the state organizations, their funding is very different. And so our goal is to work with everybody at what needs they have, but we'll have support group, quarterly trainings, and so things like that. So, but from the research that we have done as to what really a lot of these organizations felt like they needed to be supported, this will be able to cover everything that we've heard back from them about.
That's amazing. If you don't know exactly what we're talking about when Peggy refers to state organizations, she's talking about state homeschooling organizations that by and large
Yes.
have been around since the earlier days of homeschooling and are responsible for getting the good homeschool laws passed and
Yes.
still are the legislative gatekeepers and watchdogs for the great majority of states. So if you're
Yeah.
not a member of a state org or you don't know who your state org in your state is, you can go to homeschoolfreedom.com and find out that information. And I'm sure you can go to SPED Homeschool as well and find out if there's a state organization that is partnering with Peggy on these things. Is that correct, Peggy?
Yes, we'll be actually adding them starting in January. So
Okay. Okay.
this week we're going to be launching. Actually, tomorrow we're going to be sharing just even with the state organizations. Our board heard of it the first time yesterday. So, but they were so excited because they really felt like that was aligning not only with our purpose but where the need was the greatest right now.
Yes, it is amazing to us. We have an organization, the South Carolina Association of Independent Homeschools, and when I
Yeah.
started SCAES, when Joe and I started SCAES back in 1990, we started it with 4 divisions. One was just administrative and technology. The other one was elementary ed, middle school and high school, and special
Yeah.
needs. And it's amazing over the years, Peggy, how much homeschooling has grown in the area of
Yes.
kids with special needs because even though the schools are saying they have these programs, no classroom teacher can do with an IEP or an individualized education plan what a homeschool mom can do, just given a little bit of direction.
Yeah, and most of the time, what you're accommodating at home is what they have in their IEP plus more, and you're just
Yes.
doing it naturally, and you don't need
Yes.
approval from anybody.
And that
It's
is
so much easier.
exactly right. That is exactly right. I can remember when, poor Ty, you know how your first child is your guinea pig?
Oh,
And
yeah, absolutely.
so he was going to college, and I wanted to have him tested by somebody else. Joe says all homeschool moms have some type of death wish. And I said, I want him tested just to make sure he's, ready for the rigors of an academic school and, will have I ruined him? That's what the answer I was looking for. Is he prepared for college or have I ruined him? And, it was so interesting because here's this auditory kinesthetic learner. And one of this things, he had been a pediatrician and is now an educational diagnostician, he said, Zan, how did you homeschool Ty? Because he didn't have any diagnosable form of special needs, but he was
Right,
this, like we
mhm,
talked about, he was not a sitter. And,
right,
there no grass grew under his feet. And I said, "Well, we did a lot of reading together. He'd read a page, I'd read a page. He bounced a ball. He never sat still when he was learning something difficult. He's always standing on
right,
his head, bouncing a ball. I mean, turning flips. He was so athletic. Anytime he could move his body, he could engage his brain. And I said, we just took lots of breaks. And he said, I have never, promoted homeschooling, but what you just said, the way you teach this child is how I have been banging my head against the wall to get classroom teachers to make these concessions and accommodations that you have done naturally. And I don't have your training, and I didn't have your training. And, but
right.
it's
But
so
you're a parent, and you know what your kids need, and
yes.
instinctively, we do know that.
Yes, and so as what you say is so true, we naturally accommodate in our homes for our kids if we give ourselves the freedom to do that.
That's true, yes,
Yes,
because
and
otherwise we're holding ourselves accountable to what we're supposed to be doing,
yes.
and that's when it starts to ruin it.
Yeah, that's right. Boy, I'm telling you, when you start homeschooling, you step into this world of educational freedom, and you just
Yeah,
have to learn how to embrace that. No matter the
so
curriculum you
true.
use, and I want to take a minute just to say thank you to BJU Press Homeschool, who is the sponsor of our podcast, and I
Yeah,
used BJU Press mainly through, high school. We used a lot of other things. There were no videos then or any of the things that I think I would find
yeah,
myself using in some way now. But, it was you just learn how to take what you have and accommodate it to the needs of your children. And I want to talk about that with you because you've got all these. I mean, I started reading some of your blog articles last night. I finally thought at 3 o'clock this morning, I got to go to bed. So I'll have 2 brain cells to rub together tomorrow when I'm interviewing Peggy, but
Uh,
everything you write is amazing and well researched and just speaks to the hearts of parents, Peggy.
yeah, we have some great people that contribute to our site. I'm actually not much of a contributor. I just make sure that, I'm a connector. I just love to use people and their expertise and be able to connect parents with people that have walked that road before them that have expertise. So a lot of people that write for our site are not only educators or have background, but they also have been teaching their own kids in the home, which makes a huge difference
It
because you
does.
can say,
It
"Oh, yes,
does.
this works," and, come from a classroom perspective, but from a home environment, it's very different, and so, actually, within the purpose statement of our nonprofit is that our resources are from the vantage point of a person who has taught within their own home, and so a lot of people that I even interview on my broadcast on my show are both parents as well as have an expertise in a field. It's just so important to have both.
Yes, yes, it really is because with the home, you can just do so much more than you can do in an institution. And if the parent just has a little bit of help and direction,
Yeah,
they don't need a special ed degree. They just
right.
need a love for their child and a little help from their friends like you
Yes.
and SPED homeschooling.
A little support.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and it's pretty remarkable. So let's walk through this. There's a mom who's got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and the 3-year-old wants to read, the 5-year-old would be happy not reading till they're 12. How how do you start navigating the waters to find out what is truly, a special needs situation, what is delayed learning, what is normal, they're just an auditory kinesthetic learner. How do you start navigating the waters for somebody who is new to homeschooling and new to this conversation altogether?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So a lot of times, yeah, kids develop within their own home very, very differently. And so you can't really compare them to one another. You just have to make learning fun. If you take the love of learning out, then you're going to actually be squashing a lot of your, what the progress that you're looking for, you're going to make it go away. So listen to that first. But also be consistent in how you're teaching. And that doesn't mean you're going to see results consistently in how you're teaching. I'm going to use this example. My oldest, he struggled to read. But I felt like, okay, what is my largest goal with this child? And so we write purpose statements for our homeschools and goals. Mine was I wanted him to love literature. And so what is your goal for teaching your kids at home? What do you want them to love? What do you want out of this? Because if you can keep that perspective, then the everyday lessons that you have are not going to seem like they're failing if you're not seeing the results yet. So just keep going on. So I fed him a lot of audiobooks. I fed him a lot of really good audiobooks. And I just kept up with the phonics and felt like, "Oh, that was a really waste of time for the day," but we did it and we moved on.
Right,
Um,
right.
and we lived in a state where we were required to test every year, so I knew it wasn't working
Yeah,
every
yes,
year.
yes, yes.
And and so at age 11, I was getting rather frustrated, but he was still loving literature because he was listening to it. I was doing read out louds at the table. Um, and then all of a sudden he turned 12 and he tested that year reading at a college level.
Wow. So he was just ready.
He was ready, and what I had been doing, unbeknownst known to me, being not having any background in education, was I was feeding him grammar through good literature. He was learning vocabulary. He was learning proper sentence structure because he was hearing it. And then we were doing the phonics, and eventually it did click. I A lot of times, if we trust the program we're using, if somebody said, "This is a research-based program for reading especially," that's very helpful, and math, you wanna definitely follow a protocol that builds upon itself and builds prerequisite skills for the next skill that they learn, it will work, but it may not work in the time frame that you want it to work in.
Oh,
Um,
that's so
yeah.
important. That's so important. And it's hard for us as moms to accept that because not so
Yes.
much anymore, but still when you homeschool, you're a little bit in a fishbowl and everybody's
Yeah.
looking at you and why aren't your test scores
Right.
this and why isn't he reading? What are you doing wrong? I mean, people are waiting to point a finger at you sometimes, but
Yeah.
you've got to just and like I say, that's changed so much since 2020.
Yeah.
But you've got to just hold back a little. I mean, just keep the pressure off the child and let them develop at their own pace.
Yeah, because I think the trap that we fall into is I see a lot of these parents, posting on social media, "What do I do to help this child?" And they want a quick fix. And then about
Yes.
20, 50 people jump on and they give them all these ideas. And all of a sudden your overwhelm becomes major overwhelm and you feel really bad about yourself when you were doing what you were supposed to be doing and then you get off track. We need to be surrounded by people that said, "You know what? I'm walking this road with you. We're struggling too, but we're going to just trust that this process is going to work, that where we've been called to is where we've been called, and that it'll all work out in the end." And you know what? It does. But we can't let that panic and that fear lead us to other places.
And, the Lord takes care of our children. I'll tell you, when
Absolutely.
both of my boys were I wouldn't say now I wouldn't even call it late reading, but because we were having to take our kids into the school when we first started homeschooling, have
Yeah.
them tested, and then the school district could decide. I mean, they didn't have any set standards, but they could just decide whether they liked my test scores or not. And if they didn't, I couldn't homeschool anymore. And so both of the
Yeah.
boys
That's a lot of
started.
stress.
Yeah, that was a lot of pressure. Both of the boys started reading when they were 7, but they weren't 6. I think Ty may have been 7.5, close to 8, and we had been working on all the phonics, like you said, and one day, we
Yeah.
just went to a restaurant for lunch, and the waitress comes over and says, "Ty, what do you want for lunch?" And he sits there and reads the menu and says, "Oh, I think I'll have the crab legs." Well, I'd have bought him lobster tails. I'm going, "Whoa, where did that come from?" It was just like
Right.
one day, nothing. The next day, he's reading everything. But
Yeah.
that's not the story I wanted to tell you was the story about my John. And so he had to go into the public school classroom, knew all the phonics, couldn't put them together to form the word cat to save his life. I had him tested independently, and my friend Lorene, who had her PhD in education, said, Zan, he's brilliant. And she showed me these test results. Just leave him alone. I said, Lorene, I can't, because he's got to go take this test. And if he can't
Right.
read, I can't homeschool him. And so we fasted and prayed, and I cried, and gave him test prep material and just said, John, when you go in here, I couldn't let him see me cry, but when
Right.
he went in to take the test, I taught him how to take a standardized test. So you look at the booklet with the writing in it, and then you have the bubble sheet. And I said, you keep your head down, look at number 1, count to 5, go to number 1, color it in, circle you want to, go to number 2, because
Yeah.
I didn't want him to sit there and feel that pressure of not knowing what to do. So,
Right.
I'm crying. John goes in because everybody who knows and loves him is happy, is not worried about this test,
Right.
he thinks. And so we get the test results back, and John scored in the 99th percentile on everything. And I'm
Wow.
thinking, "Okay, wait a minute, Lord." It wasn't like the Holy Spirit telling him when to turn left, when to circle,
Right,
what
exactly.
but when I had just prayed that the Lord would blind the school district's eyes to John's test, and so when they pulled up my John Tyler scores, they pulled up a 3rd grader in our same neighborhood, John Tyler, who later went to Duke on a full ride, and they pulled up his test scores and sent them in as John's, and it took me a while
Wow.
to realize what had happened, but I thought, "Well," and then, bless his heart, John starts reading the next year, just one day, like Ty, sits down, starts reading, never looked back, and
Oh.
he went in and took the test and did that well again, but
Yeah.
this time with his own knowledge, and he looked at me, he says, "Mom, you can't believe how much easier it is to take a test when you can read what's on it."
Oh,
So,
that's funny.
anyway, but, the Lord just has a way of
He
looking
does.
after our
Absolutely.
children, doesn't he? And
Yeah.
maybe if that's one of the things that Peggy and I can do for you today. I mean, her life is a testimony to that. My life is a testimony to that. Not to what a great mother I was, but just to the fact that I loved my children, and
Yeah.
God just superintends. He is the great superintendent of education, and he does the heavy
So true.
lifting and lets us have the joy and the relationship from it, I guess.
Right.
So,
Yes.
oh, good grief, Peggy. I feel like I could talk to you for another hour. There's so many things I
I
wanted.
know.
I wanted to talk about the 13 tips for a special needs child to continue learning. I found all these lists. I just went way back and found these lists you did, and things that kids with diagnosed special needs can do after high school if they don't want to go to college. So we're just going to have to do this again.
We'll have to do it again.
Yes. So meanwhile, tell parents how they can find you and access your resources.
Sure. So our website is spedhomeschool.com, and it's now called Homeschool Heroes, powered by Sped Homeschool, because our nonprofit is the one who powers it. But we just believe that you are all heroes for what you do and what you've been called to, and we want to stand behind you and support you for that. It is a member-based site, but for free membership. So all you have to do is sign up. Um, Create your profile. This is so important because our new platform runs off of categories and tags. So when you put in your name, you create your free membership, you can you can sort it by things that you're interested in. And that way, if you're not interested in something, you won't see it. So, and I know we have such a diverse community that we serve, that somebody who is interested in intellectual disabilities may not be interested in ADHD. So
Right.
purposely fill out those tags when you set up your profile, because you'll get emails once a week with all the new resources that are coming out that are applicable to what you want to follow, as well as discussions, different companies that have partnered with us that have resources in those areas. All of that information is going to be sorted to you by your profile. So I just encourage you to really go in and do that. There is some paid memberships that give you access to more of our exclusive material, but every one of our resources, the first week they come out, is accessible to anybody. They get locked onto the exclusive site after a week. So you can find all those either free or access them afterwards with a paid membership. But then also my podcast, Empowering Homeschool Conversations. It's
Love that
produced by
title.
Salem Media. And so you can find that on any podcasting platform. But we cover a variety of topics, from parenting to this last week was, how do you teach a child to read who has really some more severe struggles. So we kind of cover everything from just learning struggles that are pretty mild to things that are much more severe, like visual issues. Um, so yeah, just lots of different resources out there, and so we just want to help you in any way we can.
So, as we leave, do you have one piece of advice that you would want to share with homeschool moms?
So when I would finish a consult with every parent, I would always tell them, you need to follow your peace. So pray about things. If you do not feel peace in your heart about it, then God is not in that space. And don't let anxiety lead you. Don't let fear lead you, because that is the norm. That we just feel like we have to do things. And I tell my team this too. I'm like, take time, sit back, and rest in the quiet. God is in the quiet spaces, in that peaceful moment. He will lead you and guide you, but you have to be in a place where you can listen. So that is my greatest advice, is to rest, and rest in God, because he's got this. He's already written the end of the story. So don't try to rewrite it yourself. That just makes a lot of work.
Amen to that. Well, Peggy, thank you so much for being here today. This has been so encouraging for
Absolutely.
me, and I know it's been encouraging for moms. So I want to thank each one of you for taking the time to listen or watch. We know you have a lot of other things you could be doing with your time. So we pray that God just continues to bless you and your family richly, and that you will love your homeschooling journey and your children too. So as always, you can find me at zantyler.com and on social media. Until next time, bye.